I guess it connected with so many people, and like I always presumed we would be kind of like a cult band.
This is the story of a group of pals from Glasgow who formed a band and changed the face of British music.
We were celebrating. There was something to celebrate, like, every day.
A band who started off playing gigs in friends' bedrooms and soon found themselves performing at the Grammys and touring the world to millions. It's a story of risk, intuition and reinvention, told for the first time by the band themselves in exclusive new interviews with a little help from their friends, collaborators and those they've inspired.
Take me out!
It just felt like a really exciting time. Like, where the hell is this going to go?
And it was like, what is going on right now? Like, wait, what? How are we gonna get our foot in the door when there's another, seemingly there's this other beast?
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to bring that up.
I'm Rose Matafeo, comedian, writer, actor, and Franz Ferdinand mega fan. Here to show my love for the band after I was kicked off their official internet message board as a teenager. But all is forgiven. This is Words So Leisured, the story of Franz Ferdinand. Part 2, A Fire That Burns.
Recording the first album, Malmo, was a weird thing. Why Malmo,
After all the record label wooing, Franz Ferdinand signed with Domino Records on June 6, 2003, and went straight into the studio to record Darts of Pleasure as their debut single. The session was a test to see how the band would work with Swedish producer Tor Johansson. It was a success even before the song charted in September later that year. And so, the band boarded a flight and flew to Sweden to record their debut album. So, to answer Nick's question, that is why Malmo.
Tor Johansson's name came up.
Singer and guitarist Alex Kapranos.
And I was like, oh man, because I loved the Cardigans records, and particularly there was a record called Gran Turismo, which they did. It was kind of strangely kind of like rock and roll, but precise at the same time, which felt very novel.
Guitarist Nick McCarthy.
It's maybe not the obvious pick, because I didn't really see us like them at all, really. I thought we were much kind of rougher and harder, really, but I really loved the sound of it, and then everyone just thought, well, yeah, okay.
We weren't doing something like the kind of like garage rock kind of thing, which was happening at that time. There was something sonically colder that I wanted to do with the sound that I thought Tor could get his head around.
I'm Tor Johansson, and I produced Franz Ferdinand's debut album. I went to see them playing, and I talked with them, and I think they were really hyped already then. I think there were they were talking to several big producers. They told me afterwards that the thing that made them go for me was that I talked about the groovy side of their music, that they could be some kind of almost dance act. And I think they were really into that.
The studio in Malmo was called Gula, and as drummer Paul Thompson remembers, it was a world apart from anywhere the band had recorded before.
Bear in mind, at this point, I'd barely been anywhere outside of the country, and we just got a sort of Ryanair flight from Prestwick to Malmo, and turned up at the studio, and beautiful studios, all sort of certainly not like my experience of being in recording studios where it just smells of like dampness, or you're recording in people's flats or something like that. But this was kind of beautiful, kind of open plan, lots of natural light, lots of nice wood, and sort of mid-century Scandinavian furniture.
Beautiful Swedish design. Like, the guy who ran it was an architect, and it was great. It was perfect for us. Like the aesthetic of the studio fitted our minds, and Tor's knowledge was really great. I learned so much from Tor as well, just seeing him and his approach to production. And Tor's a very gifted, really talented guy in the studio, and he's also a really difficult motherfucker. I don't think he'd be offended by me saying that at all.
The session for Darts of Pleasure had been stress-free, but now at Gula, tensions began to arise between band and producer, especially between Kapranos and Johansson.
Looking back on it, there was quite a lot of aggro between me and Tor, particularly because he wanted the album to be a certain way. Like, after listening to Gran Turismo, I thought he'd be really into this kind of minimal, stark approach, which is what I wanted to do with the band. But he wanted to make it really lush and put on these layers and layers and layers.
I thought a producer was just an engineer and they would just do what you told them to do and just record you, basically. I didn't realise that he actually wanted creative input and expected to have creative input, and I think we were all a bit like, who does this guy think he is? And so at points it definitely was a battle. But we just had to kind of stick to our guns a little bit.
There was lots of instruments in the studio in Gula, and Nick can play anything.
Bassist Bob Hardy.
So if Tor wanted something to be played, like he wanted Hammond on something, and like Alex would never want Hammond on something, he would just like get Nick in a quiet moment and be like, Nick, do you want to come play the Hammond on this song? And it's like, yeah, Nick was just up for anything because he just wants to, play music. So it ends up being like lots of the songs just had stuff stacked on them, like really incongruous sounds, like things that you would not associate with Franz Ferdinand in the slightest, and it just just layered, and which was all eventually stripped away.
And so we went head to head in the studio about this, and I think it was great that we did that, because the best thing for any idea you have is to have that idea challenged, because if it's a good idea, it will stand the challenge. And it will become stronger because it stands up to the challenge. And it will deserve to exist because it survived the challenge. And if it's a shit idea, it'll crumble and shouldn't have existed in the first place. And so Tor, wanting to make a different album from the album I wanted to make, was the best thing that could have happened to the band, because it really focused me. It really made me do it. Because I remember, like, he would like try and add things on, like add all these, like, it would like kind of like talk Nick into like adding all these extra layers of synthesizers and string sounds and all this sort of shit. And I'd just be standing there going like, you can add everything you want, but it's going to come off as soon as we start mixing it. And it did. And it was great. And it was good and I think at the end, like, we both realized that because our approach had been quite confrontational, we'd actually made something really, really good together. And I've got so much respect for Tor because of that, and for standing his ground, in some ways losing, but in some ways winning, because like the sound that he got was perfect, and the way he recorded was beautiful, and yeah, we made something really good through the conflict.
Tor Johansson again.
I actually won an award for producing this album, like producer of the year or something. And I feel a bit ashamed over that, because, I mean, it's really nicely recorded. I think that, but they had the concept. They came with a plan and a really good concept. And I saw that, and they had good demos, they had good ideas. So I only helped them to do those ideas better. It's one of the albums where I have maybe not being that creative about changing anything conceptual anyway. I might have had some ideas of making the arrangement a bit more efficient and adding the melody here and there and so, but nothing. I mean, the whole concept was there from the start.
Whoever's ideas came out on top, at the heart of the record were 11 tracks that sounded like nobody else. Tracks written back in Glasgow about the band's friends and their nights out, songs about sex and death, but mainly sex. And they sounded as unusual as how they were made, often by smashing together opposing ideas and making up their own rules.
One thing I've been working towards all over all the years that I've been a songwriter is the dismantling of preciousness in the attitude to songwriting, and being able to not be possessive or too protective, and to collide ideas together and smash them up until you end up with a beautiful chaos from which you can make something that you've not heard before. And that attitude was really there at the heart at the beginning of that. For example, a song like Darts of Pleasure, it started with a song that I'd written a couple of years earlier on an acoustic guitar, which was really slow and kind of dark, and had these kind of like dark introspective lyrics. And I was like, okay, I like that, but like I'm gonna smash this up, and I'm gonna like play it twice the speed. And I'm gonna like give it this aggravated energy. Then Nick had this this funny little song about being Mr. Fantastic, sung in German.
When I was teaching the guitar, I mean, some kids are just so hilarious, you know, and this little girl just said, we were trying to write a song together, and because I was like, you know, showing kids how to write songs, and it's just really, really inspiring because it's so easy and then funny. And then she just came up, we didn't really write the song, but she came up with Super Fantastisch. She said, because I was saying like something about German, and I learned something in German, Super Fantastisch, and I was, yeah, that sounds brilliant, yeah. And then just like added on the last bit that turned into Darts of Pleasure. And the first bit was Alex's, and then it just went German.
Ich heiße super fantastisch. Ich trinke Shampoos mit Lachsfisch. Roughly translates as, I'm Mr. Super Fantastic. I eat smoked salmon and drink champagne. Which
doesn't really make sense, but it's fun, and let's do it. Let's put it together. Yeah.
Darts of Pleasure, Alfaxa, Jacqueline and The Darker the Matinee were all made by forcing together ideas that didn't conventionally fit, and turning Alex's introspective lyrics into frantic indie rock songs that belonged on the dance floor. The track Michael, meanwhile, gave the band a new rule of their own, as Nick originally struggled to master his new instrument.
Because I was trying to work out the top strings on the guitar. I could only play like one or two at the same time. And then I had this little thing on two strings that just totally worked, like nearly through the whole song. And that kind of style, I just kept going with. I always did that with songs that we had. We always had that. We'd write them with normal chords, usually like acoustically a lot, and then we just like minimize them down to my two strings on the guitar and Alex's riff or whatever. That was one of kind of one of the manifestos that we had, really, that we wouldn't play chords. Still don't like playing chords, really.
But it was another one of these unusually written songs that was about to propel the band and their debut album to unexpected global success. Take Me Out has come to define not just the band, but a whole era of British music at the start of the 21st century, and quite possibly every wedding you'll ever go to for the rest of your life. And yet, for such an instant indie classic, it's a pretty strange song. certainly in its structure and how the band put it together.
It was another one where we had two parts. We just thought we'd stick them together because it had worked before, you know. And we're like, well, okay, we can do this. And but we just couldn't work out how to put them together. One was too slow, one too fast, and then that was kind of like a cool rule-breaking thing.
The way it was written originally, it was supposed to be more like a conventional song. So if you're lonely, you know I'm here waiting for you. I'm just a crosshair. I'm just a shot away from you. And then I say, don't you know? You say you don't know. I say, take me out. Do 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 do. You know, it's supposed to go verse, then chorus, then verse, then chorus, and some middle eight. We tried playing it. We took it to the band and we kind of learned it, and we kind of thought, you know, there's something really good here. There's something cool. Like that guitar riff's really catchy. The lyrical idea is good. It sounds kind of cool, but we had a problem because when we'd written the two sections, the verse and the chorus, we'd written them at different tempos. Just, I don't know why, but like the verse sounded right a little bit faster, like about 10 BPM faster than the chorus. And we tried playing it live a couple of times in this really basic early form. And if we tried playing it at the tempo where the verse sounded right, then the choruses sounded too fast. And if we tried playing it at the tempo where the chorus was right, the verse sounded too slow. I was just like, man, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And so I was like, whoa, what are we going to do about this? It's like we need to change tempo. And I thought, I know what we'll do. We'll just take all the verses, we'll stick them all together and just sing them continuously at the beginning. Then we'll need to do like a kind of switch around. In fact, I think we had that at the beginning of this, like the I know I won't be leaving here with you. And so I thought, yeah, we could do that. Then we'll just slow the whole song down and then we'll do some kind of hits.
I think we just really wanted the two parts to be part of the same song, but we couldn't accommodate them both at the same tempo, so we just sort of cheated, I guess. It's just like, can you get away with this? And they were like, oh, I suppose so. And then the transition becomes like one of the most exciting parts of the song, which obviously we weren't aware of that at the time. It was just kind of like purely functional.
And when we did play it through all the way, and like it kind of all kind of made sense, and it's like, oh, nice one, that sounds kind of cool. And when we finished playing it, I remember joking to the rest of the band and sort of saying, oh, you know what, I can almost imagine that even being on the radio or something, like meaning it might get played on Beat Patrol on Radio Scotland, or maybe a John Peel play or something like that. And I was sort of right.
And it was such a really earworm, because I remember then when we started playing it out, it was just in my head, like, you know, the riff, like, na, 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 and I vividly have, like, it was in my brain. And I'd be walking around the art school, the Mac building, going down to the wood shop, and then coming up the stairs, and just in my head constantly. And it was like, it was almost like a premonition of what was to come, you know. It's like this song that just exists in our minds and like amongst our friends, but it was this massive, this earworm that I couldn't get out of my head. And it was just like, you know, 2 years later, it was just on the radio like 10 times a day. Like,
I always really loved playing that song, although we played it so many times. It was lucky I really liked it, yeah.
Nick McCarthy wasn't alone. It seemed that everyone liked Take Me Out. Well, not everyone. Band manager Cern Canning.
There were 3 songs, I think, Tor Johansson, who actually did a brilliant job on that album, but there were 3 songs that he wasn't as keen on. It was Take Me Out, Darker the Matinee, and I can't remember the other one. I think was a single as well, like maybe This Fire. But I remember at the time, one of the band told me a funny story about Tor was in the studio and they were about to Take Me Out, And he said, I just don't like that bit in the song. And they were going, what bit's that? And he said, the bit that goes da 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 da. I just don't like that. It's too simple. which is priceless, you know.
Record producer Tor Johansson.
I mean, Alex came with this, the riff. And I understood that, yep, sure, it's kind of basic music that everybody will understand. I mean, it's so stupid. And I didn't really like it. I mean, I thought it was a bit too stupid. But on the other hand, it was placed in an incredibly clever arrangement in a song. And I mean, it was their idea of the first part slowing down, going into the next part. I mean, kind of genius. Nobody have done that before. So I kind of accepted the stupid guitar riff, but I never liked it, no.
Not the song's number one fan then, but there is one part of Take Me Out that Tor Johansson must surely like.
It is strange because, I mean, that song, it still gives me money. I have like a royalty income every year from that song. That I hated. No, I didn't hate the whole song, but still... I mean, I should maybe not accept those money just for my honor.
I'm on BBC Two now, telling Terry Wogan how I made it, and what I made is unclear now. But his deference is, and his laughter is, my words and smiles.
After 5 weeks in Malmo, locking horns with their producer and sticking to their guns, the band emerged from the studio with the album they wanted to make. An album that Tor Johansson today calls one of the greatest debuts of all time. So, what next for Franz Ferdinand? Bob Hardy again.
I think that at that stage, for me anyway, I mean, almost like recording an album was the end goal. You know, it's just, oh yeah, brilliant, we get to make a record. You have no expectation of how well it was going to do, you know, or where, you know, how many copies you were going to sell. That wasn't really any didn't have any expectation. We were making a record and we'd do a bit of touring in the UK. You know, we're playing like the sleazies of each town. That would have been amazing.
Things went a little better than that. On February 9th, 2004, the band released Franz Ferdinand, an instant hit that went on to sell 3.5 million copies. It was preceded a month earlier by Take Me Out, which charted at number 3 and has since clocked up over 1 billion streams. Conor McNicholas was then the editor of NME, the UK's biggest and most influential music magazine.
I really clearly remember the first time that Franz Ferdinand were ever mentioned. It was there was a guy who was new music editor on the NME. It was a guy called Imran Ahmed, who went on to be an A&R at XL Records and signed Vampire Weekend and loads of other stuff. And he was my new music editor at the time. And I remember kind of walking out of my office and there being this kind of kerfuffle in the office. And somebody turned around and said, we've got this new band. They're called Franz Ferdinand. It's really hard to explain how revolutionary it was at the time to have a kind of a Middle European historical reference like that as a band name. It immediately marks the band out from everybody else. There was immediately a kind of an intelligence and a positioning behind this project that just it was so different to anything else. And Imran was pushed forward and stood in front of me and waved a kind of a little plastic case with a burnt CD in. And he said, they've got a song that's got the lyrics, words are poison, darts are pleasure. And he just looked at me wide-eyed and he said, nobody's written a lyric like that in this country in years. And he was absolutely dead right. And in that moment, everything changed. People were desperate for something, but Franz just seemed to have this magic formula where they just cut through. They just got pulled into the mainstream. And I suppose there was an element of, you know, what was not to like about this band?
From the moment Take Me Out was released, things rapidly accelerated. Really rapidly. The band that a year ago had once belonged to Glasgow's art scene now belonged to the entire world. And so, they went and played to the entire world. Solidly. Tor Johansson again.
I had no idea it was going to be that big. I didn't think it was going to be big. I thought it was, I guess they can sell, 100,000 copies and be like an indie band among others. So that was crazy. Especially not America. I mean, they were played on mainstream radio in America with that sound, that really aggressive sound and that weird songs.
Cern Canning.
One of my favourite Franz memories, I have a few from America in that era. One of my favourite memories was being in a queue in a record store in San Francisco, and I was just queuing up to buy a record. It was Amoeba, which is an amazing store in San Francisco and LA, and the guy in front of me had the album, and I don't know why, but I looked at what he looked like because I was checking him out, and I realised it was Robin Williams, and he was standing there with one record and it was ours and he was buying it, and I just thought, that's pretty weird. And then a few months before, I was in New York on my own walking to a meeting, and for some reason, Take Me Out was number one on this radio station called K-Rock. K-Rock's a massive station in LA, but they also had a New York station, and I was walking through the Lower East Side, and I just saw from the other side of the road this Hell's Angels sweeping the street, and as I got nearer, I realised I was outside the Hell's Angels chapter, and this Hell's Angel was sweeping the pavement and singing really loudly, and as I walked past I realised he was singing Take Me Out, and I just thought, it's getting weirder by the day now.
Like, I guess it connected with so many people, and so many people I didn't really expect it to connect with. Like, I always, presumed we would be kind of like a cult band. Always, we're not exactly kind of mainstream people, and it was strange to see that song become so widely accepted and widely loved. But at the same time, it totally makes sense because it's a banger,
Take me out!
We were celebrating. There was something to celebrate, like every day. Every day there was a great gig, or like some great bit of news about something or other, and like, or something exciting happened, or you met someone like exciting or famous, or like some kind of hero, and so it was just partying. I mean, yeah, it was heavy partying. Like Bowie started going down to gigs in New York and stuff, and it's like, what's going on?
He came twice to our gig in New York. Once he came backstage after the gig, and we kind of knew he was there, and then he came in, and we were like, ooh, he looked really small, and he had like little round glasses on and a brown tracksuit, and he was kind of in disguise, and he had like a moustache, and he took the moustache off and was like, oh, whoa, it's David Bowie.
And it's like, hello, boys. And I remember the four of us were obviously quite stunned, because I know the other guys felt about him the same way that I did. This sort of untouchable, unreal character. He obviously sensed the situation as well. Like he must have been used to it, because of who he is. He must have realized that just by him walking into the room, he would have had an impact on the people in that room, especially us, because he would have known that we were fans. And he immediately tried to put us at ease. He was like, "Hi, I'm David," and I was like, "All right, hello, David." And to break the ice, he said, "All right, I've got an impersonation for you." And it's like, right, okay. And so I said, "Right, boys, who's this? And then he's put on this kind of like weird, kind of like bad American accent. There's me doing a bad David Bowie accent. So I'm going to do a bad David Bowie doing a bad American accent. It's like kind of like, hello boys, I'm from a band. And we were all just kind of like, oh, and he got, you don't get it, you don't get it. And so I was like, no. And he did it again. It's like, hello guys, I'm a singer in a band. And it was really awkward. It was really, really awkward. And we were just kind of going like, we don't know who it is. Who is it? And then he turned around and he sort of said, it's Courtney Taylor. And I remember saying, I don't know who that is. And from the Dandy Warhols. I was like, all right, the guy from the Dandy Warhols? What? You walked in the dressing room and you're doing an impersonation of the guy from the Dandy Warhols? Like, whoa, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it was just surreal. But it was we were just taking everything in our stride because we were so busy. We were constantly on tour or on the road, on playing shows, playing these amazing shows with these incredible like crowds where you get this massive endorphin rush, then going to these amazing parties afterwards. So it was just seemed, I hate to say it, but it kind of seemed normal. It's like, oh yeah, of course the boy's here. He came down at the beginning of a US tour, and then we played the same venue about 3 weeks later, at the last gig of the tour, and he came back, and like after the gig, he came backstage again, and like nothing, just in him door, and he's like, oh, I brought my friend Lou. Like Lou Reed walks in. It was just like, it was mental. It was absolutely crazy, yeah.
Of course, it wasn't just rock royalty that had fallen for the esoteric charms of the band. There were thousands of people falling in love with them in their bedrooms, hundreds of thousands. People like me. And in the early days of the internet, there was a place where we could be our awkward selves and nerd out on all things Franz Ferdinand. Yes, I'm talking about fan forums. A wild west of teenage hormones and pubescent hysteria. It was where a 14-year-old me professed my love for the band from the other side of the world.
Hello, I'm Victoria Lane, and I was a moderator on the Franz Ferdinand forums from 2005 to 2008. I was a very nerdy kid at school. I was quite precocious as well, so I was very into art and literature. Did a lot of staying in over lunchtime in art club, stuff like that. What happened was, I remember seeing them on, it would have been MTV2 at the time, and just thinking it was brilliant because they were like me, or like how I wanted to perceive myself. And that being a bit nerdy and a bit sort of having that wry sort of cocked eyebrow at things was desirable and cool. And then it wasn't just, you're an awful, horrible little nerd at school. It was something to be desired and was cool.
This is all sounding very familiar. Victoria may be describing herself, but essentially she's also describing me, sat in my bedroom in Auckland, New Zealand, finding a way to connect with the group I loved.
To be on the internet at that time, it wasn't a standard thing that everybody did like it is now. You had to be obsessive in something or other, whether it would be gaming or bands. You would have to be obsessive to be on it. There were threads for each of the band members, and it would be hundreds of pages long, and it would just be photos of them and girls and boys, I guess, as well, talking about, just different things they were doing, about their personalities, about how good they looked.
I had found my people. Until one day, I was blocked from that forum. The crime was a post about how I one day dreamed of marrying Alex Kapranos. Not the most perverse fantasy, but back then it was enough. And while the shame took a while to get over, I can laugh about it now. Essentially, because that moment led directly to me narrating this podcast and getting to know the band 15 years later, thanks to my 2018 Edinburgh show, suitably called Horn Dog.
The winner of the 2004 Nationwide Mercury Prize is Franz Ferdinand.
Really did not expect to win it. It seemed like we were riding such a high, and the record was doing so well, and we were just everywhere that I don't think we were cool enough to win the Mercury. That's in my head. It was like it was always the prize that the kind of left field band or artist won, the cool left field artist, Whereas we just seemed like at that point we seemed so we were everywhere. We were just like, even though it had been a short period of time, we were just like, all over the radio. It was like very mainstream. Our record was selling like loads of copies. So we did not expect it. We'd turn up and play. So winning it was a total like, what? That's crazy,
Yeah, I mean, who gives a shit really about that kind of stuff? But like they read it out, and then Paul was gone. He'd started walking. He thought we'd, he didn't think we'd win. And he'd walked out the door. I had to get him back.
And I was just like, I'm just kind of burst. I'm kind of done with this. I hate awards things. It's just nonsense, and I think I'm just going to go home. And then they called our name out. And the thing with the Mercuries is certainly with the Brits, they tell you beforehand if you've won it. So if you watched like the footage of us at the Brit Awards, like acting in like mock surprise when they call out our name, that's obviously we already knew. We were just being like cocky dickheads. But so they called our name out, and it was like genuinely a shock. And then we had to do like a press junket, which was horrible. And I think there's an Artworks Scotland documentary. They were following us at the time, and we're doing like this first experience of just standing in front of like banks of photographers all shouting at you with flashbulbs going on in your face, and it was horrible. Absolutely, I don't know how people do it, but at one point I shout back at them. I go, "Stop shouting at me!" And which I remember, which I don't even remember, but like a lot of people watched that TV show when it was aired and were like found that bit pretty funny. But then I just felt like I'd been shot through like a wind tunnel, and then the next thing we're sat on a sofa getting interviewed by Joe Wiley, and Brian Eno's sitting next to me, and I was just like, "Oh, hi, Brian."
This guy handed it over to us, and was like, and he came over to us, and he like gave us the award, and was like, and he said, "Well done," and I was like, "Ew." And he smiled, and then he had this like silver tooth, and it went bing in the light, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Brian Eno!" and he gave it to us. So I remember that very clearly, like looking into Brian Eno's face with a silver tooth going bing on it. That was really, really funny.
And then the following day, we actually flew to the States, and as they put the sort of the onboard entertainment on, they used to put like a news bulletin on before you get to choose the films and all that. And we're in economy class, and you can see all the screens on, and I guess the Mercury Prize was a sort of news feature at this point. It was newsworthy, so we could see all ourselves on the screen, and a few people were just like sort of like looking around, going, "Wait a minute," and that was quite bizarre. And the rest of that year was just bizarre.
The following years would have their bizarre moments too. Coming up in part 3 of Words So Leisured.
And after the gig, there was like a big punch up, like between the band, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and I was ready to just like go home at that point.
As the band continued to relentlessly tour the world, they finally reached breaking point at what has become an infamous night in Paris.
I heard that the porter cabin was actually shaking. Just the sound of things smashing.
They share a stage with Gwen Stefani, the Black Eyed Peas, and Maroon 5 at the Grammys.
And it was like Madame Tussauds on acid, and met Ricky Martin, had a panic attack, went home, went back to my hotel.
And Franz Ferdinand re-entered the studio to record their second and third albums, made with blood, sweat and tears. In some cases, literally.
So Paul's hand was just bleeding afterwards because just playing the same thing, really hot. Drumsticks had kind of worn through one of his fingers.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write music, and I wanted to record it and then write more.
That's all coming up in part 3 of Words So Leisured, the story of Franz Ferdinand. I'm Rose Matafeo, and this has been a New Allotment production.